a lot of us who are sensitive have been told that softening or having a softer shell, maybe a softer kind of strength is less, but it is not. And I've started thinking about the strength of water and softening instead of pushing. You are allowed.
Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listener. Today's conversation is one I've been so excited to share with you because my guest is Chelsea Emery, a recent private coaching client of mine and an amazing member of my Seen and Safe community. What you'll hear in this conversation is something that I've had the privilege of witnessing up close over the past 6 months. Chelsea's process of stepping into a new identity, not just as someone who has moved through an extraordinary mind-body healing journey, but as someone who's now offering that kind of support to others as a chronic pain and symptom recovery coach, helping people calm their nervous systems, work with unconscious patterns, and recover from chronic pain and unexplained symptoms with compassion and choice. In our conversation, Chelsea shares the arc of her healing, including recovering from 45 years of migraines and other symptoms, and the turning points that helped her get there. But what moved me the most is how clearly she names the deeper shift underneath it all: the permission to soften, the permission to receive support, the permission to stop living like everything has to be earned through pressure. If you're in a place where you can feel a new chapter calling you, whether it's about healing, visibility, leadership, or stepping into a new version of your work, I think this conversation will offer you a different way of understanding how change actually happens, not through pushing or forcing, but through softening, allowing, and being supported as you become who you already are. Chelsea, welcome. I'm so happy to see you. I've been looking forward to this conversation all week. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's such a privilege because, I've been listening to your podcast. It's one of my favorites, and I don't think I ever miss an episode.
Oh my gosh, that feels incredible to hear, and I'm so honored. And we've recently come off of a beautiful 6 months of working together one-on-one, and that has been such a privilege and a joy for me. And it's been just so fascinating to walk alongside you as you have stepped into and continue to step further into a new chapter, which includes, among other things, this new professional identity. And I wonder if you could share with folks a little bit about whatever feels relevant to you in this moment. What is this new chapter? What is the work that you're doing? Who are the folks that your work is designed to help?
So, I am a chronic pain and symptom recovery coach now, and I offer one-on-one support for those people who find themselves with chronic pain. And I like to always say this part, or unexplained symptoms, because it's not just pain. It can be a whole myriad of symptoms. That is the new work I've shifted into. And some of the approaches I offer are around finding ways to gently calm the nervous system, to uncover unconscious beliefs that can be part of what's keeping us in these symptoms, and really developing a self kindness practice.
Amazing. And the folks who work with you are just so fortunate in my opinion. Um, I know a little pieces, many pieces of this story probably, but I'd love to ask you to share with myself and with listeners what has been the path that's brought you here because first off, this is not your first career, so you've had other professional experiences prior to this and that are woven into this, I'm sure. And like so many folks in, all realms of the helping fields, I know that it's personal experiences that have brought you into this work.
Yes, absolutely. Like many of us who shift into the mind body space, mine is because of my own recovery journey using the mind body approaches. And for me, are you wanting me to share just a little bit of that experience?
Yeah, as much as you would like to share, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
because I think, many people will, even though if their stories are very different from yours, hearing someone else's story with this, it's very orienting, I think, when we're in the wilderness of it ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So, about it's almost 4 years ago now. I went through a kind of experience of a whole collection of symptoms that just flowed one right on top of the other. And they were so severe that my life actually had to go on hold. I got to the point where I was afraid to leave the house, and I just kind of spent all my time in bed, just kind of managing symptoms, trying to get through them. And even prior to this, I had already had chronic migraines for like 45 years. And, or
I
tension head.
want to pause there for a moment. 45 years.
Yeah. So I'm
That's a long time.
56,
Yeah.
and they started when I was 8. And I think it's been 2 years now. I maybe had one in since my recovery, and that's it, which for me is like incredible.
I mean, I've heard you share this before, but I got chills again. It's so very powerful. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's unbelievable. It's a joy like no other to be free of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had those, and I wasn't even those just became a regular part of life because I had them since I was 8 years old, and I just thought it was the thing I had to live with for my life. Like everybody had something. This was the thing I had. And so they just, I was just used to either having to go to work with them and then like go home and get in a dark room because I just had them so long that they were normalized. And yes. So there were those. And then in my late 40s, I developed back pain and sciatica, that whole like numb thing down the outside of your leg, and started to have some digestive problems. And then that whole collection of symptoms that occurred. Now, those happened right on the heels of a couple of years of um, personal stress, and then career stress, a real high year of career stress. And so it was definitely all uh, moving me to this very intense period where I had insomnia all the time. I now developed chronic pelvic pain and interstitial cystitis, which, just in case a listener doesn't know what that is, it's it's exactly like experiencing a UTI or bladder infection, except that you have no bacteria. So every
Oh,
time you go in to get tested, they tell you nothing's wrong. And even if you go ahead and take an antibiotic, it doesn't fix it. And so you're and I had bladder infections off and on since I was 16. So
yeah.
I was shocked because I know what those are, right?
Yeah.
And to be told that I didn't have it was just so confusing. A lot of this, when these symptoms are happening, you're just so confused and alone, and you just feel like your body's turning on you. Um,
And I can't like, I'm just like, God, how overwhelming because, I mean, I've had my own mind-body journey primarily with migraine and some other symptoms, but this layering of symptoms, like any one of them alone
I
could be
know.
utterly overwhelming.
I know, and I'm not gonna give you the entire list, but it just kept going.
Yeah.
And between the IC, that's what we shorten the interstitial cystitis to IC, and then IBS entered. I mean, I really was scared to leave the house. I was just like on edge all the time, and I did what we all do, which was I started seeing all the specialists, all the doctors, mainstream and alternative, because I was raised by hippies, so I know all the alternative peeps. And I went down just about every food elimination diet you can imagine. I was doing it, and I was so scared of food. I was so scared because, especially if you come from an alternative background, you have heard over and over and over again that it's food related. That's
Yeah.
just a big part of the alternative world. And um, so, thankfully, we're going to get to the good part here. Thankfully, on my journey, I was introduced to the Curable app. And I feel like most of your listeners know what the Curable app is, but
Many of them do, but plenty of them also don't. Yeah.
oh, okay.
So that's a good catch. Yeah.
Well, the Curable app introduces you to the mind body approach and the neuroscience behind how we receive pain and symptoms, that all pain is generated in the brain. You start there, and then it gives you choices for working with all of that. And you have this menu of more education on the brain science, meditation, brain retraining techniques, or expressive writing. And for me, that menu in the beginning was really important because I just could not be told what to do. I just needed not to have pressure.
That's so I got actually chills again when you said that because, first of all, I just very much related to that. And both in terms of, my experience with migraine, which I found the Curable app, and that was my doorway into recovery. But I've found that in, prior things I was working through in life and subsequent things, like that pressure element.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Just can't have it. Just can't have
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I don't know if that is universal or if it's like some of us are just wired that way, but that pressure of being told what to do, certainly doesn't agree with me if it's like a must. If it's a like, here's a path that you can follow, that's one thing.
Yeah.
And if it's a you must do this, that's a path to a dark place for me.
Yeah. And just saying to myself, I'm only going to choose what speaks to me, and it's all an experiment. And when I was exploring the Curable app, it took me a minute to get into it. I didn't like jump right in and go, oh, this is it. I actually it took me a few months where I needed a story paired with the education. And so, like, I found the app and say, like, April of 2023. And then it wasn't until August that I really went back to it and got in after listening to Dr. Strack's recovery story. I was just
Mm.
like, I mean, I am a story person. So that did it for me. I was like, oh my God. After I heard his story, I went back and just like dug in like nobody's business, at that stage.
Yeah, that's a really interesting that's an interesting part of your story that it like yeah, that story can drive, recovery, transformation, moving from point A to point B.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I found Dr. Schubiner's Unlearn Your Pain, and just big pivotal moment for me. And I decided that was by like January of 2024. I decided myself to try an experiment of journaling every day
Yeah,
and using his book to guide me. And woo, that was my powerful month. That was, I do believe, I don't know, I should say it was true for me. I wonder if it's true for a lot of us who were people pleasers, that
mm,
I needed an avenue, a safe avenue that felt safe to me to release anger.
yeah,
And he really gave me that, especially with the EAET format. And I just did it in journal form.
which is yeah, for folks who don't know what that is, EAET stands for what is it?
Emotional
Emotion
awareness,
and expression
and
therapy.
expression therapy, thank you.
Yeah, and this is, something created by Dr. Howard Schubiner and
Yeah,
his
yeah.
colleagues. Yeah.
So, I had no idea I had that much repressed. No idea. I thought I was like, pretty aware that
Mm.
of my life story and my feelings. I feel like I was, that person that could always talk about her feelings, but talking about them and feeling them are very different.
Yes. Yes, I think that is something very profound that, that I also very much relate to. When I came upon this work, I was already training to be a therapist myself at the time, and I had been in therapy for 10 years, so I thought, "I'm well-versed in my feelings," but I found the same exact thing that you just described.
Yeah. So, and I will say this other thing. I also um I needed more support than just initially than just reading, because I was doing everything by myself and I had no idea that there were all these. I mean, this is maybe later on in the podcast I'll talk about this more, but I had no idea that there were people here in my state that I could have um that were working in this field.
Yeah.
You're very isolated when you are in severe chronic symptoms and pain, and just your world gets really small. And I just didn't know. So, what I did do though was I went to a practitioner, Dr. Robin Schaefer here in my area, who paired really well with
Mm.
the mind body approaches and who let me lead. And during there was quite a bit of time I saw her weekly, and that compared, combined with Schubiner's book and Curable and that weekly support, like I had never let myself have that kind of support. Never.
I think that I'm so glad you, named that because I just know that many, many listeners will hear themselves in that, like, that you had not allowed yourself to be deeply supported
Yeah.
is something that many people will relate to.
Yeah. It's a big deal to
Yeah.
allow that, to give yourself permission.
I'm curious, was it uncomfortable because of it being unfamiliar?
All of it was uncomfortable, and but I knew her and I knew her well, this practitioner, and I had decided that I was so tired of going to the doctor and not feeling safe. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel seen. I felt like I was overwhelming because I was overwhelming in
Because
that
you
I
were
had,
overwhelmed, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And she listened and let me lead. And it was just wonderful.
This theme of autonomy is, like, standing out as a headline or a
Oh,
theme,
maybe.
I think, in your story. I mean, that to me, it's standing out as a theme. Yeah.
It might be.
And so bring us into, like, the turning point, because I also wanna go into your we're talking now about this, journey with symptoms, and I wanna dovetail into how this recovery story dovetails into your professional transformation or, new chapter and yeah, all of that.
So I'm going to go back a little bit and say
Yeah.
that right before I, you know, pretty early, a little bit before I started working with you with one on one coaching, I had decided to make a shift in career. And that was not.
And is it okay if I ask, so was at that point, where were the symptoms at the point you had decided to make a career?
So I was
How do
able
those 2
to
things line up?
manage them, but they were
Yeah,
still flaring considerably.
yeah.
And they kind of changed. Like I started getting these fevers and coughs. And instead of the chronic pelvic pain, I would get like laid out. So I was working as a teacher. So, for example, I would get to the summer and it would be, so it's June, but I'm down for 2 months with a sinus infection and fever that
Oh.
won't go.
Mm,
And I'd go through something else that was stressful, like, say, holiday season. And the
yeah.
same thing would occur. And I would still have flare ups in digestion. And, this is how this happened. I started asking myself, what is going on? And even though I couldn't name it at the time, I can now, but I'll tell you at the time, I
Mm.
trusted my instincts that it had something to do with my job. And
Oh,
yes,
you were making a connection between what was going on in your body and
yes,
your
yes.
job. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I couldn't put my finger on it, but I was journaling. I had become so enamored is not the right word, but I had found such help, particularly from your journaling method. And it was a daily practice that in those dialogue questions I had with myself or the symptom, um, at one point, it actually becomes revealed to me through that process.
Oh,
Yeah. Um,
yeah,
but I didn't know what it was, and I still didn't know. Like, I retired, and then I decided I didn't know what I was going to do, and so the only thing I could do for this moment while I was figuring it out was substitute. So I
substitute teaching because you had been
substitute teaching.
teaching all these years.
Yes.
Yeah,
So I um when I made the decision to leave educate or retire, like the earliest year you can retire, but I was going to leave no matter
yeah,
what, even and I was like, oh, I can retire. Sweet. Cause
yeah,
and,
yeah.
so I retired. And then in that year of discovery, I kept coming back to, and this is, and even with your journaling method was that I thought maybe I wanted to shift into this mind body space. And maybe maybe I could become a coach. And, I was holding those questions and just kind of pondering it, and it felt very scary. And like I said, I'm still having some symptoms a little bit in this time, but they would come and go. Um, and it got less when I went to substituting, a lot less.
Interesting. And just for folks' context, like so folks can get a sense of like what you're shifting from and into, what kind of school, were you working at? What age group? What sort of teaching have you been doing?
So, for the first half of my career, I was a preschool and kindergarten teacher in private schools.
Mm.
And it's the little ones that are my joy. And then, when the second half of my career, I moved into public education. And um, in private schools, you don't have to necessarily, at least it used to be, licensed as a preschool teacher or even kindergarten. So I was never licensed, but so when I moved to public school, I became a special education assistant. And in my state, that's called an LRC, teacher learning resource center assistant. And worked, I ended up working in a high poverty um, school with kids that were, just so many of our students were in foster care or homeless situations, and maybe lived in violent situations, unsafe.
Mm.
And so as I built my skills over the time, I ended up becoming trained, and specifically, it's called zones of regulation. And I worked with
Mm.
behavior groups and teaching skills for regulating
Huh.
their emotions.
So
And
related
I
to
know, I know.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
And uh, I loved it. I loved it so much. And here's the part that I want to um, really bring home, though. I was thinking about this a lot, Anna, which is that I attached so much meaning to the work I was doing.
Mm.
I was so proud of making a difference and um, doing this really important work. I was just so proud of it that um, something over time began to believe that the work was so important, I could never turn it off. And
Yes.
it it became obsessive. And
Mm.
I can remember scoffing when people would say, Chelsea, you need to stop, working on the weekends, working on this, when you get home. And I would just be like,
Yeah.
I don't do that. I don't compartmentalize. I'd like,
Yes.
for me, this is all one thing. This is my life. And I feel kind of embarrassed for my prior self talking that way, and I was also had the don't tell me what to do thing, right?
I love that. I'm laughing, this is very much a side note, but when I was younger, my mom used to say that my middle name was "Don't tell me what to do."
So sadly, what had been this joyful, purpose driven profession that I was so proud of, it the way I came to it started to poison me.
Yeah.
It, the
It's so
pressure.
interesting, because of, myself having worked in this mind body chronic symptom space, for some years. Like, I would see and hear about so many different versions of what you just described. Like, one that happened to come my way more than once was, like, a musician who is just loved and was so passionate about being a musician that it became like, the stakes went up so
So
high
high, so high. I had
that it
made
became
the
physically painful.
Yes, I had made the work So important. So, and meaning, I had this like whole thing, Anna, like I was like, it's almost like the money doesn't matter, it's the meaning. And yeah.
Yeah. And just in me hearing that now, I'm because I mean, money can mean lots of things, but one of the things it can mean is receiving. It's like you're receiving energy back, right?
Yeah, no, I regret that I held those beliefs.
But they're all these things are all part of our journeys, right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
all stages along the way.
And I wanted to name that and give that background because I haven't been able to formulate it actually until this moment, until I was preparing for like, I was really pondering like what happened right before I allowed myself to work with you.
Mm.
Um, and so the reason I name that is because I was still kind of like from that pattern, I was still kind of bruised or maybe like metaphorically limping when I was um, um, uh, getting that support with you. From the old career, I was still letting go.
Yes.
And it was this big deal just to decide to move into something that was my own, something that was profound for me, a profound journey that I really wanted others to be able to have the opportunity to experience.
Mm.
Um, but I was still wounded, you know, from
Yeah.
just on a career kind of level. And the attitudes and self pressure I had brought to that. And I did not want to repeat it. I did not want to do that again.
A quick pause here because I want to invite you into something that I think could shift the way you feel about showing up. If you're a sensitive creative or entrepreneur, and the idea of being really seen and heard brings up fear, resistance, or that, oh no, not me feeling, you are in good company. My free visibility workshop, Let Yourself Be Seen, is all about making visibility feel safe to your nervous system and true to you. We'll explore how to work with fear as a doorway into more authentic self expression so you can share the work that matters most to you without pushing, pretending, or burning out. You can save your spot or catch the replay at annaholtzman.com/be seen. Okay, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah. Gosh, I just, like, had a wave of seeing something more clearly through what you were just processing out loud, and it's about shifting career, which is usually an identity shift that goes far beyond career. It's something I've done in my path a bunch of different times, and what I was taking from what you were just giving voice to is that shifting career is about so much more than simply making a cognitive decision. It's a process of letting go with mind, body, and spirit. And in some ways, I think it's sort of like grief, where it's like very hard and in some ways painful to let go.
Oh, it was so painful. In especially well, and part of that process was, for those people who've read Burnout, from the Nagoski, sisters,
Yeah.
they talk about closing the stress cycle, and
Yes.
one of the things I did that really helped was I wrote a goodbye letter that nobody saw. You know, it was a year after I retired, and I wrote this goodbye letter to my community of teachers, my especially people that stood out for me, you know, that had been important to me. And when you retire, you really don't stay in contact. You know, when you change communities, you change communities. It just happens. It's not. You know, I have a couple that I still
Yeah.
meet with, but it's just like it's a you moving to something else. And if people are still in it, they're still in that community. Anyway, I wrote this goodbye letter, and I wrote it also to the students that I was still carrying.
Yeah.
Um, and said all the things I wanted to say to them and did this whole goodbye, cried my eyes out through the whole thing. And then went in my backyard, dug a little hole, put the paper in there and burned it like ritual paper, and put this beautiful painted rock that I'd been given over the top. And every time I look at it, I can remember, you
Gosh,
know?
this isn't my experience, it's your experience, but you're telling the story of it, and it's like my mind, body, spirit, nervous system is going along on the story. Like you were saying earlier, stories can carry us through something. And I just felt like this kind of like click, 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 like all the cells of my being sort of making a shift along with you through this story.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible. And, after I kind of got out of the wobbles, let's say, of the limping, I should say. Yeah. Then I felt kind of, Anna, like when we were working together in the beginning, I could
Yeah.
remember that you asked me on our first meeting, what did we want to work on? And I was like, dear God, I have no idea. Cause I was like a little like baby calf.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like I was like trying to stand up, but I was like falling down and trying to stand up and do this new thing. And, I just didn't even know where to start. And you were so generous with me. And what you really taught me, and this is with our one-on-one, this is with podcasts. You say this in your Instagram post. It's that baby steps are everything. And
Mm.
those those baby steps began to build my confidence. And you have this way of just kind of um, holding the space, this gentle space. And it's just like this sweetness to a person's nervous system. And, you know, over that time, I mean, I was so scared so many steps along the way, like, especially with the like, oh, I'm going to do this new thing. So there's that part, right? And then there's the like, oh my God, I'm going to have to tell my friends and family and the world.
I think for everybody, that is often the scariest part. Like, there's plenty of other parts that are scary, right? There's, like, putting out a shingle and saying, "Hey, world, this is what I do to strangers." Um, but it's telling the people in your inner circle that you are now a new version of you. It feels very uncomfortable for a lot of us.
Yeah. And there'd be people that ask me like, um, what what is the work? And then depending on who I was talking to, even if it was the friends, I might like start tripping over my words. Like I don't quite know
Yeah.
how to formulate it. And so lots of practice with that. I'm still practicing how to
Which
explain.
I would say, and you can tell me if you agree or not, I think it's usually not a lack of clarity, but it's that fear comes in, and when fear
Yeah.
comes in, it's like everything just scatters.
Yeah. Yeah. Brain erase.
Yeah, yeah. Brain frog, deer in head for me, deer in headlights is, like, the big one.
Yeah. I mean, I was, in terms of the visibility piece, I can remember just all of those beginning parts and just like being laid out for a week afterwards when I posted something,
Yeah.
or the first podcast or, I think I was sick for a couple of days, like sick with worry. The first podcast interview.
I'm laughing with you because I have these same experiences. I think I've told you when I decided to create, a course, my first, uh online course that people could take, and I was recording my voice. I l I made an appointment to record my voice, and then I spent that entire day lying on the couch and not moving instead of recording.
Yes, I completely understand that because I tend to, I have I would say out of the whole fight or flight, what is it? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Freeze is the one I'm most experienced with.
Yeah.
freezing. Yeah. Over the time that I worked with you, now this is my fourth podcast interview. I'm so proud.
Wow. I knew this, but it's incredible to hear.
I
And it's
know.
incredible to, you know, hear you tell the story kind of all in one arc and think back to how you described feeling like a calf, which we all experience when we're stepping into a new chapter.
Yeah,
Um, and then in the grand scheme of things, n like, less than a year later, 4 podcasts under your belt.
I know. It's shocking.
Mm,
And
yeah,
the last one I did, I I actually stayed calm all the way through. I was like,
amazing,
"Oh, it can happen."
amazing.
Without the nerves taking over
Yeah,
so much. And then,
yeah.
were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna share a little piece of my experience, and then you can tell me if you relate or not. I find that as I continuously step into new things that I want to step into, but it scares me. In the beginning, I can feel the fear so intensely, like energetically, physically,
Yeah.
and because of the intensity of it, I tend to think, "Oh, this is gonna take me forever to, quote, get over it." And, well, it turns out I never get over it, but it softens a lot of the times much more quickly than I think it will just by taking those first few baby steps.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it was the same. And when all I did was go in and change my Instagram from personal to business. That
Yeah.
was the first thing, and then it was telling a little bit of my story and what I'm doing now on Instagram, and that put me out. I was like, "Oh my gosh," like, "I need to
Yeah,
go
and
lay
I remember
down."
saying, "Chelsea, I'm, like, so blown away," because when I was like I also had that moment where I first turned my Instagram public, and I was terrified, and it took me, uh, I think a couple years before I put myself on video. And not only did you go on video, but you beautifully told a part of your story,
Oh, thank you,
and
Anna.
it was yeah,
You say that I'm a go-getter, but it doesn't feel like that inside, It feels like everything's moving in
yeah.
like molasses, really slow.
Which is also really interesting how that internal experience can be vastly different from how you're being externally experienced.
Yeah. It does
And
surprise me.
something that I continue to find is that I can step into something like speaking in a bigger arena than I'm used to. I can step into it feeling internally very scared and then hear someone say that I provided comfort to them while I was speaking.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, I know the same is true for you because, I was hearing the back end of what you were experiencing, putting yourself on video for the first time. And I also experienced before we spoke about it, I watched your video and I was so just carried by your story.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
And then um probably my biggest hurdle was that creating my website, and you helped me so much with that. You really offered support, and just even if it's my first version of a website, I'm just so proud that I actually accomplished it because I found it really hard. I was finding that step really hard, even though, and I would, with a lot of things, I would take some steps and then I'd be paused and then some more baby steps and then paused. And then eventually I created it. Oh, and here's a new thing I haven't shared with you is
Yeah.
that I did create flyers and gave them to my urologist.
Oh, how cool.
Yes, who loved them, and I did not
Oh, I
expect
bet.
that. I was totally terrified. I didn't even know if I was gonna give them to her,
Wow.
because this is me, like, I don't wanna overstep. I don't want to, is this inappropriate? Is this, but I do
Mm,
have a good relationship with her, and probably apart from the doctor I mentioned previously, Robin Schaefer, this urologist, is happier for me than anybody that the recovery happened, because she doesn't see it very
yeah.
often.
Yes, and I can only imagine how grateful she must feel to have you now as a resource to send clients to who, she can help probably a lot to a certain point, and then it goes beyond her scope.
Yes. Well, she stated, it wasn't private. She stated that actually most of her practice ends up revolving around um, cancer patients, and she
Mm,
simply doesn't have the time available to give pelvic pain patients
yeah.
the amount of care and time they need.
Yes.
And so she
Yes.
was thrilled to find out that there are people who can.
Yes. Amazing. This is it's really exciting to hear. And, what you were describing about the website, it's like, we all this is something I've been told by numerous teachers, and I pass it along, is that we only really have to be a few steps ahead of someone in a particular journey to be of help to them. And when you were telling me, the website, this you had your reasons why it was hard to move forward on it, and I thought, wonder if it's really about the tech, because it wasn't really so long ago that I was struggling to get a website up there, and I thought it was about the tech, but I, for
Yeah,
myself, found that it was really a lot about the fear of being seen, honestly.
yeah, it's so big.
Yeah.
It's so big, that piece. Even, I include in here the things that I got support with you, was that I attending the 2025 ATNS conference. That was very scary for me, very
Oh,
scary.
yeah. And
And
for folks who don't know what that is, this is a conference for practitioners who support folks with chronic symptoms. And
yes.
yeah.
And I, had a lot of like, I don't know how I'll measure up. I'm going to be around a lot of doctors, a lot of therapists. I'm just like beginning the coaching. And so those kinds of fears.
Mm.
And going anyway, even, and trying to um, move forward, even while having fear, and giving myself practices to support myself, and then getting there and just having this fabulous time. And like,
Amazing.
oh, here's my new community. And
And
I
being
wouldn't have
invited
known
into
that.
leadership roles.
Oh, so then that's the latest thing, which has been a hurdle for me,
Yeah.
which is that I'm taking the lead on creating a chapter here in my state. In Oregon is where I am, um, for practitioners here that are in the mind body space, so we can kind of build a supportive community in between yearly conferences, because the conference is once a year.
Amazing.
And well, yeah, I was very scared to do that.
I wanna ask this is a question this is something I love talking about with people, and we've kinda gone into this already in certain ways, but have you found there to be parallels or overlaps between the symptom recovery journey and the entrepreneurial journey, like, or the stepping into a new professional identity journey?
For sure. And the mind body recovery, if it wasn't apparent, it really is like shedding a skin. Or yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way I think of it. The process allows you to like spend a lot of time contemplating and reevaluating how you're living your life. And that same thing starts happening in the similar process is happening in the shifting to the new career. As I said before, I did not want to repeat what I had already done. And
Yeah.
so that's a lot of that self attuning. Um, I know one of the little practices you did with me that I kind of think of from time to time is I was saying to you, I was asking about charging, like how much to
Right.
charge for services. And you said to me, well, let me throw out a number and see how that feels. Let me throw out this number and let me throw out. And that was all about internal listening and feeling as you were saying it. And um, that has really stuck with me because essentially creating a new life, a new business, and wanting to do it a new way, I want to be attuned differently.
Yeah. Oof. That really landed with me, and I know it's gonna land with many listeners, including those who, may not relate to, like, the symptom journey, who may be on a very different professional path, but I think that's something so many people can relate to is going through, the most of our professional lives up to a certain age, not attuning to ourselves for understandable reasons, and we're trained to ignore ourselves,
We
we're
are.
trained
We are
to
trained to
obey
ignore.
and yeah, follow orders and people please, um, and for many of us, that works quote unquote well, for a period of time, and that propels us forward in our careers until we hit a wall and it all comes crashing down on us in some way, whether it's with physical symptoms or stress, burnout, or something else. Um, and then for many of us, there's this desire that starts to emerge to have a different relationship with the work that we do and with
Yeah.
ourselves in our work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty amazing that whole work of listening to your inner guidance, to feeling where your nervous system is at, is like, honestly, it feels spiritual to me.
Yeah. As you're developing into this this career, this identity, this role as as a mind body coach, do you have a sense of how you would describe your personal style with it? Because, you've experienced there are lots of different styles out there with the work. Some people focus more on like brain retraining idea, others focus more on more body-based stuff and, movement, and, some people are very much like, "This is my method and you must follow it A to Z." I think that's probably not your style. Um, what threads have you kind of pulled together from what works well for you? What has resonated most for you? And also, is there any of your background as a teacher that's weaving its way into your approach?
Hmm. As a teacher, I feel like I can't not have that part. It's just there.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just going to say this little part. Recently, it was said to me to consider how I would um, teach this to children, teach mind body work to children. And that
Yeah.
just like lightened my spirit. And like, I felt really like giggly considering it that way because I would have lightness and fun and lots of safety and snacks. No. I
Please.
say I say that part if I was meeting people in person, but I'm going to move away from that part and get serious here for a minute. But because for me, um, the most important part was um, emotional expression and finding emotional safety. And that's more of the practices I offer. And obviously, journaling is top for me. But I know it's not for everyone. So I am very happy that recently I've learned about EFT tapping. And that is another avenue that a person can use if journaling really doesn't speak to them. The approach I've learned with it is very similar, but it is speaking out loud and tapping acupressure points. And I found it, not only was it soothing for the nervous system, but it's also naming feelings, moving it out instead of holding it in. And so I do like some of the brain retraining, and definitely the education around the neuroscience I think matters. But for me, it's a small piece.
Yeah.
The emotional safety, ways to release, ways to uncover what we're holding unconsciously, and really finding those practices that bring you calm, hands down, breath work. And for me, I would expose people to that, because if it is an avenue for you, it is really helpful for calming. And the other piece is what I like to call green medicine. And
Mm,
um, it is taking time outdoors, whatever that is for you, and sinking into present moment techniques. And my favorite one, when I say present moment, is the five senses. And I don't like the one that has you like counting, like count five objects that you can see. To me, that's busy. When I really can sink into just visually and relaxing my gaze, when I can, for me, because I'm in Oregon, it's forests. And when I'm in a forested park, hearing birds, the creek, and then also the cars, because it's part of it. Um, uh, and the sense of the wind, the touch on my face or my feet on the ground, what I'm smelling, whatever taste is sitting in my mouth, and really sinking into that present moment, and letting go of the overthinking, just letting them pass
mm,
by. It's not a forcing thing. It's just we're just allowing the thoughts to move through us. That present moment is like it's like I want to say it's like being fed, like a full body feeding
yes.
and recharge. So these types of techniques are what I value the most, but I also believe in choice. Lots of choices.
Yeah. I wanna describe what I was experiencing on, like, a mind-body level as I'm listening to you, and I'm listening to your words, but I'm even more so listening to the way that you express yourself, your energy, the tone of your voice, just, like, the who you are of it. Um, if I could give, like, a facial expression to chronic symptoms, having experienced them myself, that facial expression is, like, the hyper serious furrowed brow, like, concentrating really hard, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm listening to what you're saying and how you're saying it, I feel this kind of, like, effervescence bubbling, like, under my furrowed brow and just, like, offering it. this really gentle, um, optional invitation
Yes.
to just let that go a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we all don't like being told what to do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We are at that point in the conversation where I'm gonna ask you the final 3 questions that I love to ask every guest. And I feel like we're really well teed up for the first one, which is if there is a soapbox message that is imbued in the work you are doing now and your approach to it, what would that soapbox message be?
Well, when I think back to when I was in the thick of it, um, and then where I am now, if I could have talked to that self, I the person, that self that was, in chronic pain and chronic symptoms and who was so overwhelmed, I would have said, um, "Whatever you can, gentle your actions.
Mm,
Do whatever
gentle
you
your
can,
actions.
and it's okay to soften."
Mm,
You know, a lot of us who are sensitive have been told that, softening is, or having a softer shell, maybe,
yeah.
a softer kind of strength is less, but it is not. And I've started thinking about the strength of water
Mm,
and, um, softening instead of pushing. You are allowed.
I'm just, like, absorbing this physically, and it feels really good, and it also feels like I'm very much in process with it, and hearing you offer that encouragement and permission, I can feel my own nervous system, ligaments, musculature, like, feeling like, "Yeah, this feels like a good invitation, and we wanna, like, test it out just a little bit more," and it still feels like a tentative movement into greater gentleness.
Yeah.
I love that that's your soapbox message because, when I say soapbox, like, I think that can evoke, like, shouting or something, and what you're saying is soft, but in its softness, it's also revolutionary.
Yeah. Soft doesn't mean weak. Softening doesn't mean weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I really do think about water and wind who have this softness but are incredibly strong.
It's like we entrain each other's nervous systems with our words, and my nervous system is getting entrained by this message that you're delivering, and it wants to move toward it. It feels good.
I love that.
Um, what you shared kind of dovetailed into this next question, but I'll ask it anyway, which is if there is a listener who's hearing this conversation, they're hearing you tell your story, and they're hearing this message that you have about gentleness and softness, and that they are not weak. They're actually strengths and they're good. If this listener is thinking, gosh, I'm kind of getting what you're saying, and I'm curious about moving toward that, but I maybe also feel overwhelmed about where to start, and, like, that's a very new concept for me. What words of encouragement might you share with them?
Well, I think this has maybe been one of the themes. We've had a couple of themes in this conversation, One of them is give yourself permission to be supported.
Oh, yeah.
And there are so many ways to receive support in a way that feels comfortable to you in this moment. If it's if it's not one-on-one, maybe it's in a group setting. And I didn't mention it before, but also in that January, 2024, when I was having a really big transition pivotal for my recovery, I gave myself permission to be in a 12-week curable group at
Yeah.
that time. And that group support was so loving. It is loving to give yourself support. You are allowed to give yourself whatever version um, you need. And if it's chronic pain, seek that out. Or if it's not a group or one on one, seek a trusted friend, seek support. You deserve it. If it's visibility, join Anna's group. I can attest to that. It's fabulous.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. And and likewise, speaking of support for chronic symptoms, the final question is, where can people find you? How can they reach out to you? How can they engage with you and explore the possibility of learning from you, of working with you?
Well, on my fabulous new website, you can go to yourpeacefulpathways.com, which is a play on creating new neural pathways and my love of forest paths. And you can also just even if people have questions, I'm happy to engage in questions. You can email me at chelseaemery53@gmail.com. And then I'm also on Instagram, and that one is Emery_CJ.
Awesome. And I'll put those links in the show notes so folks can find them easily. And I encourage folks, if you have seen yourself somewhere in Chelsea's story, or you've seen that she might be someone who could support you in your journey, I encourage you to reach out. Chelsea, I just adore you. Thank you for this time together. Thank you for this conversation. And thanks for sharing it with these listeners too.
It's just been such a joy.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.